Next, we want to welcome to stage Bharathi Ramachandran, Director of Data Science, and Adam Cahill, General Manager at Kinetic, both from Syneos Health. They'll explore how causal AI agents are enabling real-time precision engagement in pharma. Welcome, Adam and Bharathi.
All right. Thank you very much for having us. You can go to the first slide of the show. So Bharathi and I, we work at a company that I once heard described as a pharma company that has everything except the molecule. So Syneos doesn't develop drugs, but pharma companies hire us to do just about everything else that they might need to do, from running clinical trials and then all the way through the entire commercialization process. My job is in Kinetic, which is the data and insights platform for our commercial business. And where I sit, down at the bottom of the chart, we see all the data flowing in, and pharma commercialization ends up looking a lot like just a really complicated marketing mix challenge. The programs that we run can often include dozens of different specialty tactics. They all need to work together to drive an outcome. The outcome is a doctor writing a prescription. So you guys, that will sound a lot like a good challenge for Causal AI. And that's really what led to the beginning of the partnership that we have with CausaLens. Next one. I also sit on the commercial leadership team. So in that context, one of the things we do is make decisions about AI investments. And from that vantage point, you start to become aware pretty quickly that most companies have really had underwhelming results so far. So the data here is from BCG. I feel like I've seen this kind of story in a lot of other places. So something like 3/4 of the companies haven't yet generated any value from their AI initiatives. And our goal is pretty simple. We want to put ourselves in the position to be on the 4% side of the chart and make decisions that help us create value. Next slide. I'm going to run a theory by you about what's going on with all this sort of lack of value statistics. And I think it could be that the mental models that we're using to understand AI are too limiting. And that's leading to a lot of ideas and a lot of initiatives that probably aren't ambitious enough to be able to create value. So you probably see these kinds of things the same as I do. You're the pilot and AI is the co-pilot. You're the driver and AI is just the GPS that helps you get where you're going faster. My favorite one is the magic wand. So AI is a magic wand, but you're the wizard that controls it. And all these are just different ways of saying the same thing, which is that individuals are in charge. And what AI can do for us is basically just enhance what we can already do. So I don't think these analogies are necessarily wrong, but I do think that they're too small. And it starts to make some sense to me that if this is how so many people are thinking about AI, lots of the first round of initiatives, they're basically about making individuals more efficient. But the problem with that is even if everyone in a company becomes, 10% more efficient, or let's say 20% more efficient, I still don't think that adds up to something transformational. And at least not in the way that I imagine a board of directors is expecting their AI investments to turn out. So if the goal is transformation, these kinds of analogies are probably the wrong starting point. And it's like that saying, like, you just can't get there from here. Next slide. We kind of ran into this and we experienced this firsthand. So Bharathi and her team, once they built this set of causal optimization models that they believed in, the next question for us was, well, how do we make this just the standard way that we work? for everything we do. It's not like we want causal answers, but just some of the time. Like we just want to do work this way. But we do probably thousands of programs in a year. And if you think about the co-pilot approach, the idea that we could somehow use AI to just make all of our individual data scientists more productive, it really can't solve a problem on that scale. And there's no number of data scientists we'd be able to reasonably hire that could solve the problem either. Next one. So this is how we, sort of came into the world of agentic AI. And this is a world filled with many white papers and think pieces about the future. And honestly, the long-term implications of an agentic world are hard to grasp, at least for me. But working with the team at CausaLens, we took what I think is a really practical but an important first step into this future. Next one. So our team's built an agentic data scientist that's using the causal models we built to generate optimization recommendations. And Bharti's going to tell you the specifics of this in a minute. I'll just focus on what I think this means for us as an organization. And if you look at, a couple of the example questions on the screen, in the real world, these are the kinds of questions that could honestly take weeks to answer because, we don't have data scientists just sitting around waiting to answer questions like this that come in from business partners. But what this agent has let us do is start to work towards a path that actually just creates a different way of working. And it's a way of working where the business people like me, have access to data science really on demand, and where every optimization question has a causal answer. And we've effectively been able to scale the impact of the data science team almost without limits, at least, for this particular kind of question today. Next slide. That brings me to something that I heard Darko say not too long ago. And, the idea was instead of thinking about AI as a co-pilot, to start thinking about the ability to create autonomous workers. And I found this to be a really big idea. And just a better starting place, a better mental model to understand what the potential is in front of us. And just think about if you're starting a new initiative, the difference between starting with the question, what would I do if I had a co-pilot? And the ideas that come from that compared to the ideas that come from, well, what would I do if I had an autonomous workforce? And we've found that thinking this way has really raised the level of ambition we have with the investments that we're pursuing. And that ultimately, I think, is what leads to real value creation. Next one. So I'll close my part of this just with a simple framework that we're using to guide our approach to AI and sort of how we're thinking about what decisions we make that get us in that 4% of companies that actually are realizing real wins from their investments. So we absolutely have a whole portfolio of initiatives, with generative AI. And within those, what we're trying to do is make sure that we're solving the right problems. And what that means for us is problems that are big enough to actually be worth solving to begin with. And then problems where we have some form of data advantage to work with as kind of the raw material. But then, that space is really crowded. And so we've also made real progress and a commitment to Causal AI with this partnership. And there, what we're doing is pretty simple. We're answering the most important questions we have when it comes to driving performance. So what's really working and what do we do next? And doing that not some of the time, but all the time. And then finally, wherever we can, we're looking, to scale capabilities agentically and thinking much bigger, really as a result of this partnership here. So Bharti, I will hand it over to you, my friend.
Thanks, Adam. So I'm going to take us through how this strategy at the company level really translates into the tools and solutions that we're exploring and building at Syneos. As Adam highlighted, there is a gap between the investments we're trying to make in AI and the tangible impact that it can actually deliver. In pharma engagement specifically, the gap doesn't just look like failure, it actually shows up as multitude of systems that are just busy without clear direction. So there's a lot of outreach, a lot of metrics and KPIs that are being tracked in dashboards, but there's really no direction around what's really moving the needle. So that disconnect is especially visible in the way that we engage our healthcare providers. And that's where activity doesn't always lead to actual outcomes. And this is the challenge that we set out to address with Causal AI. I will walk through how we built a precision optimization framework that's focused on scaling ATP engagement, trying to close that gap between what we do and what actually works. So from a traditional data science lens, we have seen engagement in pharma evolve. First, from very rep-driven engagements and outreach to more omni-channel execution today. And what this brought is really a lot more data, but still has not made us much smarter. And I think one of the key limitations is that most of our measurement frameworks today still are focused on correlation-based associations. Still haven't gotten us to whether specific engagement is really driving a change in prescribing behavior. So for example, by sending an additional email to an HCP, are we actually changing their prescribing intent? Or was it just an extra touch point? So this is the kind of question we really want to be able to answer. And without a clear way to isolate the impact, we're limited in our ability to further optimize these engagements. And that's why we shifted our focus from more a broad exposure-based targeting to more causally informed engagement. And that meant understanding not only what had happened, but also what worked and for whom. And that's what we mean by precision optimization today, and where most of our efforts are focused. So we broke our problem statement into a structured approach that aligns decisions along 3 different verticals, starting at the campaign, down to the channels, down to an individual ATP or ATP segments. And we did this because truly precision really needs to flow through across all the levels and cannot be siloed. And it has to show up across these 3 different levers. At the campaign level, we're able to ask questions around what's really driving causal impact and what's the uplift looking like when we have specific targeted activities in our campaigns. And this helps us assess the effectiveness across brands, across regions, and course correct in real life. At the channel level, we identify which tactics are high leverage, the ones that are driving meaningful lift, and the ones that are just burning the budget without actual impact. And this allows us to cut the wasted spend and rebalance the channel mix toward more high leverage channels. And finally, at the HCP level, where precision really comes to life, we are able to determine what kind of channels and the sequence and combinations are really most effective for individual providers or ATP segments provided given the data. And I think this is where data science really becomes field strategy, enabling individualized action at scale, aligning both to outcomes and taking into account real-world constraints. And structuring our decisions across these layers has helped us think about our work more cohesively, whether we're making national campaign level decisions or planning out local outreach in the individual districts or territories. And this isn't just about adding more layers of insight, but really structuring our decisions in a way that's repeatable, explainable, and scalable. So when we applied this framework in practice, we built causal inference models across multiple of campaigns, specifically designed to estimate that incremental impact of each engagement, isolating the effect of various channels, adjusting for known confounders at the ATP level, at the region, at the territory level. And looking at specific brands, we were able to use the model and understand and quantify the 8% uplift in prescriptions that are driven by targeted activity. We also learned that not all channels are created equal. So face-to-face interactions have typically been most effective, and that is the intuition that a lot of our campaign reps have. We realized that face-to-face with sampling drove a lot of the outsized results at the campaign level, but when we actually zoom in and look at it at individual ATPs or ATP segments, there is really a different channel mix that's driving that behavior. And these kinds of learnings have helped us optimize how we think about population-level channel mix and match individual ATPs' targeting strategy. And this allows us to move from more broad-based assumptions and be able to test these theories in our data and be able to make actions that's grounded in strategy from ATP behavioral concepts. And I think what's really important is also that it's not just analytical insight. We're able to inform strategic enablement across our commercial operations. We used our causal outputs to inform and optimize some key layers and core areas of field and campaign strategy. First was prioritization. We used causal estimates to identify high-value ATPs based on their potential to respond, given their prescribing potential. And this allowed us to shift from targeting strategy that's just based on volume or decile-based targeting to more impact-based targeting. Second is allocation. We're able to guide how we deploy our field reps by geography and balance the channel mix based on predicted ROI. And this allows us to move from deploying reps where they're available to actually where they can actually drive meaningful lift. And third is campaign investment. Third is campaign investment optimization. So by running different scenarios based on trade-offs that evaluate cost as well as expected impact under different tactical choices, we're able to better inform whether leaning in more on face-to-face reps or doing a more digitally focused campaign is going to be more effective. What kind of strategies and strategy mix is going to give us the best return within the same budget? These simulations give our commercial teams the confidence in how strategies will actually play out in the field before they even go to the field. We're also able to use the causal insights and are exploring more fine-tuning our message content and the message delivery as well. Sequencing the interventions as well as obviously personalizing it as much as we can at the ATP level. Together, these capabilities have really allowed us to build more prescriptive playbooks that align with commercial implementation and that's backed by causal impact. And as Adam said, to really see the value of these models, especially in pharma engagement, we need to be able to embed our insights past just dashboards and be able to incorporate it within the existing workflow, especially in an industry like ours where there is traditional thinking, there is a lot of intuition-based decisioning happening today. How do we take the insights we're seeing from our data, the insights that we're confident about, and be able to incorporate it into daily decision-making? And that's what really led us to exploring data scientists, agentic data scientists with CausaLens. And they've helped us build this agent that's powered by our causal models. And it allows our commercial users, specifically brand leads or campaign strategists, to ask complex optimization questions about what's the best engagement strategy for the top 1,000 HCPs, as well as incorporate known real-world constraints, such as campaign costs, as well as channel availability. The agent interprets the question, queries behind the scenes, and delivers an actionable answer in minutes. And as Adam said earlier, this isn't just about making individual users more efficient, but really the agent is about scaling that thinking, bringing causal reasoning closer to the decision makers in planning and execution of campaigns. And I do think it extends the work that my data science team does today. It moves us from point-in-time analytics or reactive analytics to empowering our commercial teams closer to the data. As I reflect and wrap here, I think what we have built is really a foundational step toward enabling causal decisioning and bringing in that elevated thinking in how we decide our campaign strategies into the ecosystem of commercial pharma. I think there is a lot more to do here as we look at change management, as we help train our commercial leaders and commercial teams on how to incorporate these types of agentic workflows, these kinds of insights that's really might sometimes even contradict their intuition, but really help them become more comfortable about the insights that we might show them. So I don't think these kinds of models or workflows should be built in silos, and that's one of the biggest, I think, learnings we have had in incorporating and bringing in our commercial teams onto this development journey with us so that we can build systems that are more applicable for them. Thank you.